Welcome to Lesson 10, Understanding the CSS Box Model and Positioning. All right, to understand the CSS box model and position, you need to know how to conceptualize the CSS box model, how to change the box model the browser uses, how to position your elements, how to control the way elements stack up, and how to manage the flow of text. So if you could picture the box model as a series of boxes, concentric boxes, circling, and then there being different layers to the box. So the middle layer is the content. So let's say if you had a paragraph element, the content would be all the text in that paragraph. That would be in the content area. Above that, you have the padding, which is really just the spacing between the content and the border. Then you have the border, and then finally you'd have the margin, which is the spacing between the element and the other elements that surround it. So the CSS box model, the size of the box increases to accommodate the margin, padding, and border. So the total width of the element is made up by the width plus the left and right padding, plus the left and right border, and plus the left and right margin. So all those elements make up the total width of the element. So it's not just the width of the content. And same thing for the height. It's everything that adds up, makes it the total height. So in the default box model, you can stretch beyond the width and height. So the content boxes, the width and height values are assigned to the content box only, and the padding and the border are added afterward. So what I want to do is I want to give you just a quick example of the box model. So I'll click on here. So what I've done here is I've used a div, and this is in the box model over here. And this is all I've used to create this div. So I have this class called card, and as you can see from the card is made up of this this rectangle that holds all the information about our iPhone. So this is kind of like a card that you would use to lay out items that you're selling. So in that card, we have an image, which is the iPhone 16 image. We have a title. It's just a paragraph. It's the iPhone. We have price, shipping, and total for all these. And those all get displayed out here, so like you could see it here. So let's go ahead and look at the styling that we use. So if I click on over here and look at the styling. Let's see, let's go all the way up here. All right, so this is where we define the card. The card class. And then here we give it a specific height and width for the card class. We give it a border. So that border is 3 pixels solid black. That's what gives it that nice black border. And then we give it some margin and some padding. So the margin is what's outside the box. So if you look at, if you go back over here, the margin is this part over here. So the div, the border for this div is this black border here. The margin is outside, and you can see it's kind of the spacing between this and the other elements, but there's no other elements here. And then finally, the padding is what's inside. So if we look again here, this padding is what covers the edges before you get into the content of the div there. Okay, so that's we talked about the content box and the border box. Okay, next we're going to look at our positioning. There's different ways to position your element. Um, and there's just different ways to change the display of the element. So block elements are stored on their own row, so they're like one row at a time. Then inline elements are placed on the same row until they hit the end of the row. So let's go ahead and look at an example of that. So we'll look at the difference between a block. So these elements were all set up as blocks. So if I go over here to the block.html and look at how I set these up, these were all set up as block. So the card ones are block by default because I didn't say block anywhere in here, but it still is putting it in block. And as you can see from the description, if the default is for it to be basically take up the whole row. So even if there's no content after it, the next one in a block is underneath it because it takes up the whole row. Then inline, which is the next one. So let's go ahead and compare it with inline. And now inline is kind of all over the place here. And the reason for that, let's go look at the inline, because what I did is I said card inline, and then if you look at your style for the card inline, which is down here, I just put display inline. But it's really kind of the problem with the inline display is it's all over the place. Nothing stays inside. Everything's kind of becomes independent. So this isn't a good one. What you really want, because what you're probably looking for is for everything to kind of line up in a row, and then when it hits the end to start down at the bottom. That would be the inline block. So if you go to the inline block, this one goes all the way to the end, and if the next one doesn't fit here, it goes down to the next row, which is what happened here. Okay, and the way we define that is I define a card inline block class, and then everything's the same except for the display. Now it's inline dash block, and that gives it that that particular look there. Okay, the next thing I want to look at is positioning. So there's different positions that you can positioning that you can use when putting your element out there. So if you have an element, you give it a position property, you can have it be absolute, fixed, or relative. Relative is basically it's relative to the current position in the document flow. I think this is the default on most elements because it's usually relative based on what the previous element was. And then you have absolute position. This element is positioned based on the container element. And this is the one where I have this one here. So here we have absolute. And so basically I place this on a particular part of the page. So if you look at the card absolute, which is this is the style I use, everything's the same. I kept it inline block, but then I put a position of absolute, and then I give it a pixel location. So it's left 200 pixels, top 300. So what you get is 200 over here, 300 over here, and that gets you this position. So that's card absolute. And then this I just did because if not, everything's transparent and everything you print one on top of the other overlays it badly. So to fix that, I just did this back. I added, it's basically a white background color. Okay, and then I also specified the position. The Z stack the z-index. This is a nice rule, CSS rule, that basically you can have one element appear over the top of other elements. And this is kind of what I did with the z-index here. Is I have one div above the other one, so I want to just see what that looks like over here when I go to the z-index. And again, I just have two cards, one after the other. So here they don't look that like they're going to overlap, but because of the card absolute style, oh, I have two different ones. I have card absolute and card absolute index. The card absolute, the difference between the two is going to be index has a z-index of 10. I think the default is either 0 or 1 on the z-index if you don't provide it. So because this is higher, this one's going to always appear above the other one. And if you notice, what I did is I also offset the position because I'm using absolute position. So this one's 200 pixels from the left. So I move this one over and down by 50 pixels. So that is why you have this one over and down. Okay, and the last thing we're going to cover is overflow. This is kind of a nice little thing. So if you click on here, the overflow, there's multiple different kinds of overflow that I cover here. And so here what I did is I did the ipsum lorem, but as you can see, the content's too big to fit inside the div. So that's what the overflow is. When the content's too big, it basically overflows, and you have to tell it, how do I want to handle the overflow? And there's a number of different ways to handle it, and that's what we did over here. So overflow 1 is nothing, no overflow, and so the default is just to print outside the div. Overflow 2, here the overflow we say is hidden. So what that does, as you can see, is once you hit the end, it hides any overflow. So it kind of cuts it off all the way up to where it fits. Okay, overflow number 3, here what I did is I put scroll bars for the overflow. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to scroll up and down, so it still hides the rest, but you have a scroll bar so you can go scroll up and down, which is kind of nice. And that was for this particular one. I think this one's pretty much the same thing. This is scroll, they're both scrolls on here. So these both do the same thing. Okay, so that is our last slide. So thank you for joining me for lesson 10, and I hope to see you, talk to you again in the next lesson. Thanks.